look to the center, if there's a group of seats that is available, please scooch in a little bit more because we have a full house tonight. We want to make sure that any latecomers can fill up the sides of the wings. Yeah. So while y'all are scooching, I'll just do a couple of housekeeping things. So please put your phones on silent. And also if you have a little side conversation, just know that everybody will be able to hear it because of the acoustics of the dome. Please hold all your questions till the very end. And with that, I would like to introduce James E. Washington III, also known as Jurassic James. If you don't know, he was with the museum for a really long time, and now he works with the Children's Museum, so if you go there, you can see him there. We absolutely love and adore him, and if you haven't had the experience of hearing him speak before or taking a tour or class with him, you will also love and adore him. So with that, Jurassic James. Yeah, Henry's going to switch it.
Cool, okay, I don't do technology. So first and foremost, thank you for being here tonight. There are two heroes to my story. It is personally two things. One, at the museum to continue education, do further other things. Ruth and Sarah, the ones who are in charge of adult education, they're the ones who, when I left, are like, hey, we should keep James around coming in. And they fought, and I'm here. The second hero of the story, so thank them, thanks for, when you email people, those people. They're not going to my going away party, which is awesome. And the second thing is thank you guys, because when the museum leadership was deciding to have me again, the answer was, if James does it, people will show up. And so the fact that you're here means we won! So, okay. Anyway, yeah. And so for anyone who knows, make sure I'm doing this the laser. Okay. So for anyone knowing, tonight's topic is Dinosaur Dynasties. It started out as a talk about T-Rex, and then it's just, as I do, it's spilled into like all the major predators from the Mesozoic. So, and actually, just raise your hand. Anyone here who's new to me, never seen a lecture or class? I'm just curious. You're not familiar with me. Okay, cool. Just curious. Okay, so if it's overhyped, I'm sorry, they did that, not me. So I push this button. Yeah. So does anyone here like geology time scale? Anyone love geology? Yes, geology, rocks, fossils. You have to be here on Wednesday night to like these things. If not, you're just sadistic. But the point is, this is like the periodic table for paleontologists and geologists. We find a fossil or anything, we have to know where it fits in. When I read a book about paper about any new species, I have to know when it lived and where it lived. And so the big thing here is that for you, we usually read books top to bottom, and geology on the top, basically. Older stuff on the bottom, member on top. The Paleozoic is before dinosaurs, Mesozoic during dinosaurs, Cenozoic post-dinosaurs. I'm not saying dinosaurs are the most important life forms ever. They kind of just form the way we look at time scale, right? So in our museum, I have pictures here from our museum of different things you find at different periods of Cambrian or Ordovician. So the focus is Dinosaur Dynasties or Dino Dynasties. Do know, before the dinosaurs, there were all these amazing stories of giant sea scorpions, giant fish without spines or souls that were ruling the world, and when they all died out, dinosaurs came along. So do know there's a story to be told ahead of that. During this time, we always guys kind of cram this area here. So for example, the Cretaceous period is 80 million years. So our hall shows you a few dinosaurs from that time, but there's a lot more story to be told. And of course, after that, it's a Cenozoic or a mammal. So we're seeing that if you're digging for this guy here, Archaeopterygium, you'll never find him, I'm gonna use my own laser. So you'll never find him in this area, because why? We find these rock layers, these animals this way. Now, we are all familiar with family trees. We've all at some point in school had a family tree, and the idea is that we know that we are descendants. That term comes from the fact that we descend from our ancestors, our grandparents, parents, etc. For paleontologists, it's very similar, but our tree is a lot more wonky. The idea is that we actually turn our tree upside down, because the older things are on the bottom, the younger things are on top, so we're seeing go this way. So as far as dinosaurs go, if this is your crash course in Dinosaur 101, there are 5 major groups. Kids always say, Mr. James, how do you know all the dinosaurs? And the answer is, I don't know the dinosaurs. We're finding new ones right now. But in the meantime, we look at the major groups. So marginocephala means edge of the head. So the horned dinosaurs and their relatives, Ornithopoda, birdfoot, the duckbills, the plant eaters on 2 legs for the most part. The Thyreophora or shield bearers, the ankylosaurs and stegosaurs, the large long necks or sauropods and their relatives, and theropods with predators, right? And so those are the 5 major groups. And if you look at any dinosaur group, they can fall into that tree for the most part. Now I know someone in my audience here has studied this in much more detail. I'm like, wait a minute. It is very complicated, but this is a general overview. Okay, so looking at our big chart here, this is something that I'll say it this way, I spend a lot of time looking at family trees of life, digging up stuff, etc. And the idea here is that people say, how do you determine how they relate to each other? There's no DNA, right? And the answer is, Shakira got it right, the hips don't lie. Now, some of you were born after that video came out. The point is, it was an amazing time in the early 2000s. The point is, your hips, this is a human hip, you have your ilium here, your pubis bone, ischium. Those are not exclusive to humans, because dinosaurs have them too. So the saurischians, or lizard hip dinosaurs, have the same bones, different orientation. So you're like, why do they make the hips a big deal in paleontology? They're huge bones, and the early fossils weren't the whole animal. In fact, here's a secret, kids. We never find the whole thing. We're always finding parts of it. And so the hips, basically, that's kind of universally found. All but maybe 2 major groups of dinosaurs have one of these 2 structures. The bird hip dinosaurs will be these guys, but the hips are these guys, right? Okay, so here's where I get excited. You're like, that looks painful. I know, but it's fun for me. So the idea is that we have this family tree of the predators called the Theropods, and there's always different branches, and tonight's focus will be going along these branches and seeing the different groups, how they rose and fell. The first group are the earliest, so we're earliest from the bottom, Coelophysis and Dilophosaurus. So why is that important to you? So there's a place called Ghost Ranch, Mexico. Everyone been there before? No? Nobody? Okay, you should travel for it. We should do a trip there, though. Right? The point is, I actually talked to them. They're willing to do a trip with me, so anyway. So what's going on is that if you look at any documentary about early dinosaurs in Jurassic period, 225 million years ago, they're going to mention Coelophysis. This little guy's about that big. When Pangea formed, the continents were all together. All dinosaurs looked kind of the same. They were all around the same size, the same shape. But why are they the same? Because why? The same environment for the most part. So dinosaurs evolved the same way. Well, you're saying, well, are they the ones who were ruling the Earth? And the answer is no, dinosaurs did not rule the Earth in Jurassic period. They were ruled by these things. These archosaur-like crocodile things. There are Coelophysis there, and that's what it was, competitors. Or actually not competitor. Competitor means you could win, possibly. This guy was in charge. And so these things here are really important because they're not crocodiles. True crocodiles evolved later. This guy here is a crocodile cousin, and for those of you, the word cousin's thrown around in paleontology, but the idea is that this life form here is not a modern croc, it's a predecessor that's not the direct ancestor, which is a big mouthful. So what's the big deal? These things ruled the late Jurassic period. Dinosaurs were not in charge. You know that old that saying, the meek shall inherit the earth? Nobody? Like, I've never read the Bible. Okay, cool. So the idea is that we are in Texas. So the idea here is that the Jurassic extinction event happened, and people often think that, because I think particularly if you are from America, we often think of everything as revolution, and so the thing is, did the dinosaurs get together and rise up against our archosaur oppressors? The answer is no. The Earth just killed them all off for them. Kind of like a mafia hit, and the mafia kill each other, and not you. The idea is that the volcanoes, and we actually have no idea the official cause of Jurassic extinction 201 million years ago, but we do see increased volcanism. And at the end of the story, we see dinosaur descendants and not these guys. These are all these crocodile things that rule the Earth like Jurassic, found here in Texas, in Mexico and Arizona mainly, they're in that area. And so that's what's ruling the world before dinosaurs take over. Then we have this guy here, Dilophosaurus. Now, I would argue that Dilophosaurus is the first dinosaur king. Way before T-Rex, early Jurassic, 200 million years ago, Dilophosaurus was top predator. You're like, what is this thing? I've never heard of it before, have you? You have heard of it before. It's the spitter from Jurassic Park. Now, here's the thing. I shouldn't say this, but we'll say it anyway. It doesn't spit, there's no neck frill, and it wasn't this short, it was like that tall. And the idea is that the actual niche, the job those large crocodile things had, this got replaced. So as soon as the crocs are gone, these take over, basically. And so they're found in Arizona, and people often, behind the scenes story, when I was taught in the university, paleontology, when I came to HMNS, I was teaching the public. My students were geology students. They were supposed to understand paleontology, which know everything. So I started explaining that Dilophosaurus had a neck frill, and someone was like, well, how do you know? And I said, because 3 things. 1, Spielberg said he gave it a neck frill, and I have a video on YouTube. 2, the guy who found it was like, yeah, they don't have any of that. And 3, an animal that large would need those kind of tricks, right, to exist. Now, do dinosaurs have weird abilities that we don't understand? Most definitely yes. But the idea is very simple. These things don't need that. They're this big. They're 20 feet long. It's like the tips of its time. So this is one of the early king dinosaurs. Now, as we go up our chart, we're leaving our friends, the Coelophysis and Dilophosaurus, and going up to Ceratosauria. which is right here. So this is a whole branch of these earlier ones. Now the fun thing about this is I was so lucky that last week, was it 2 weeks ago? I can't remember. Time's a thing for geologists. Last week, I went to this Lifetime Museum's grand opening of the Paleontology Hall and saw an actual Ceratosaurus on display. I remember saying I thought I'd never see a Ceratosaurus in Texas. We see them in Colorado, we're down in Colorado. They're in museums in New York, Smithsonian, not in Texas. I was super excited about that. I had a picture of it with you, my friend, but they cut the picture off the head, so I couldn't PowerPoint. So why is it such an important animal? Ceratosaurus, if it was on its own, if it was the only predator's environment, it would be the king. It would be about that tall, about 20 feet long. It's called Ceratosaurus, meaning horned lizard, because it's the first dinosaur in 1884 to have horns like this. We found the first one that found horns. Before Triceratops, before any horned dinosaur, we found this. So we named it Ceratosaurus, horned lizard. And then 5 years later, we found Triceratops, and then the other horned dinosaurs. And we're like, oh, there's a whole family of other ones that are not related to this guy. The point is, this guy, if it were by itself, it'd be the top predator, but it shared its environment with Allosaurus. Has anyone ever heard of Allosaurus? 3 of you, 4 of you, okay, good. We're not there yet. While I'm talking, and again, because I'm the way I am, you're all mainly adults and trustworthy. I'm going to give you this, not give you, but so while I'm talking, you're going to be passing that real dinosaur bone around. I know it's important at a museum you don't touch anything, but while I'm talking, dinosaur bone, touch that. It's upper right bone of the hadrosaur duckbill. Anyway, so what's the big deal? The line of Ceratosaurus was thought to have died out until we start finding Cretaceous animals called abelisaurs, particularly carnivores. Ever heard of carnivores? It means meat-eating bull. It's the coolest name of a dinosaur. And the idea behind that is very simple. It has horns on its head. Now, this is a more scientific reconstruction. This is the Disney dinosaur version from year 2001. And so they were going to put a T-Rex in the movie, but they chose carnivores. It was different. And the day, I remember I was a kid in school, and I remember the day I learned that not everyone else was obsessed with dinosaurs, was when my classmate goes, that T-Rex has horns. And I was like, what? He goes, the T-Rex, it had horns and spikes. And I was like, that's not a T-Rex, it's a carnivore, it's a different species. He goes, no, it's a T-Rex, right? And I remember as a kid, my world being blown apart. I was like, you think that they're all the same thing? And then my career began as a paleontology educator, just to tell the world and prophesize, you know. So what's the big deal with carnivores? The unfortunate thing, well, the cool thing is these little bumps and spines here aren't actually spines or like bones, like osteoderms. They're different large scales in the body. But what's really neat is that we do see the horns here, and the horns are really small, like this, and the skeleton, they would have had keratin of that too. We get the impression for that. So they would have been longer in life. But what's really, really unfortunate is the front of the nose here, and right there is all a guess. Because when they were digging up in the 90s, we didn't know that, we didn't fully understand that dinosaurs could have skin on their fossil. So when they were digging up, they destroyed the nose skin. So we have skin from like the head, the shoulders and back, but not so much at here in the neck or the face. They tore it up, not knowing. So people always say, your paleontologists always get it right. No, we're literally figuring out unknown critters from a long time ago. It's kind of hard. Okay, so here I am, and I went back in time. No, in Texas, you can go to Dinosaur, it's Dinosaur Park in Baton Rouge, Austin. They have a carnivores there. And I really excited because kids often ask me, what is the fastest dinosaur? And the answer is, we don't know. But one of the fastest dinosaurs are carnivores because they have such long legs. So again, shorter femur, long tibia, if you have a long tibia, usually a faster bipedal animal. And so carnivores is not the fastest dinosaur, but it's of the faster ones. So what's the deal with carnivores? How do you go from a few fragment bones to this? It's called family tree. So anyone here, no, I won't say raise your hand, but if anyone here is over like 40, you've been to the doctor, they say, I'd say raise your hand, but thank you for outing yourself. In the age of internet shame. But the idea here is when you're looking at any kind of medical, you're just say, well, is this in your family? Do you have this in your family, right? So we look at a few bones of these guys and compare their cousins and say, oh, these traits are found in all of them, right? Why does that matter? Because here is a part of the abelisaur family. So carnivores is the most well-known of the abelisaurs, this group, but it's actually the weirdest one, so one of the last ones. It's these long, weird legs, it's weird horns. The rest of them, they're often described as sausages with legs, because they have these kind of tube-like bodies, and we often say T-Rex has tiny arms. And it does. A T-Rex's arms fits my arm. And it's like as big as an orca whale, killer whale. But these guys have actual vestigial arms. They don't do anything. They're barely numb. They're losing parts of them. They kind of just hang back like this. And so what's the big deal? They're like bulldogs. They have these short, truncated faces. The one that's really popular is Majungasaurus madagascar. It's the largest predator found there. If I put this so you know the chart, I have the name, where it's from, and the time frame. So they weren't all exactly contemporaries, but they're around the same Cretaceous time. And so these animals, notice they're from India, Madagascar, Africa, South America, one in Europe, there's none in North America, none in Australia. And so we're seeing not only the concentrated apart, the animals are being isolated, but we find that, for example, we find tyrannosaurs here, and not here. So again, we're seeing partitioning of these roles. Another example of this is how a lion mainly eats bigger prey, wildebeest, things like that. The cheetahs eat gazelles. A lion can kill a gazelle, but it's not going to go after something that's small usually. Well, these guys have different roles too. Okay, so back on our tree, we just left our ceratosaurids. Now we're going to the really, really famous Spinosaurus and Megalosaurus. And so, the story of Spinosaurus. Now, what's really fun is that when people come out here, who are my fans, I love you guys, but when you bring people who don't know me, it's kind of weird because I'm weird. And you tell, oh, this guy is so great, he's so funny, and they go, okay, cool, and they get here, and I'm yelling and screaming, and they're like, what is this? What is, because we have my fans, we have a relationship over years of me being weird and silly and fun before and everything. I have weird tours. But the idea is that when people don't know me and I say things, they're like, what? So the example of this, I was giving a tour at Dinosaur Park, and I mentioned Spinosaurus. And I said, Spinosaurus was destroyed by the Nazis. And his dad looks at me like, what? And I realized he doesn't know who I am and what I do. So I was like, let me explain. In 1915, Ernst Stromer, a German scientist, went to North Africa, Egypt particularly, and found what we now know as Spinosaurus. Spinosaurus teeth are found all over North Africa. They were ranging from Morocco to Egypt. But he was discovering these things. And I want to tell you that paleontology it's when you're going in the field, first of all, it's the greatest experience ever, in my opinion, other than my loving marriage and family. But the idea is that going to the field today is pretty easy compared to 1912. You're going out there with no electricity, you're camping really hard. And so he finds these bones. He drew everything he found, and they're all seen right here. The jaws what really stood out, this very narrow, thin jaw, these long spines. Now, for those of you who don't know, if you've seen Jurassic Park 3, anybody? A friend of mine named Jessica loaned me her Spinosaurus. It's going to be mine now. I'm not going to stay your way. But we see Spinosaurus like this. So you're saying, how do you get to that, right? Well, the answer is very simple. He found this thing, and again, in the early 1900s, we didn't know all dinosaurs. We don't know them all now, but we knew less then. And so what stood out to him particularly was the neural spines in the back were like 6 feet tall. That's unusual. No one else in the dinosaur world has that. It also had these here's 2 secrets. If you go to a shop and buy Spinosaurus teeth, there's 2 things I'll tell you. One, it could be crocodile teeth because they eat fish. And if you ask, we still have Spinosaurus teeth here? No? Okay. So the thing is, if you buy them in any other shop, any other place that's unreputable, the Spinosaurus teeth you see there may be crocodile teeth. Not that the shopkeeper is trying to trick you, but they're the same kind of tooth design. And so that was something unusual as Stromer noticed. Now, how did this get into the Nazis? Well, he was a very outspoken critic of Hitler, which, as you know in history, was not a good thing. But he was so noble, his ranking in society, Hitler couldn't touch him, the Nazis couldn't touch him. But they put his sons on the front lines, and they were killed in the war. So when the Allies began bombing Berlin, the head of the museum that he had a specimen in was not a sympathizer, and he said, oh, I need to put my specimen in the basement, and the guy was like, no. So they took everything else down, hid it in the basement, and it was destroyed in bombing. So technically the Nazis didn't kill Spinosaurus, I guess the American Allied forces did, I don't know. In my opinion, this is what happened. They're mad. But the idea here is that at this point, all he had was just these few bone pictures, a photograph of 2, and his understanding of how it may have looked. He gave it the generic, I say generic, Allosaurus kind of general head design because he didn't know what we know now. So in the 1980s in Britain, people often say, now, you saw that chart earlier, right? Hallow's family tree. You can understand why when I'm talking to the public and someone goes, are dinosaurs real? And I'm like, look at all the stuff that... I remember, and I don't mean to be mean, I'm not going to, but I remember I was giving a very detailed tour once. It was to a VIP, and our tours were like an hour, they were very timed. And I remember I had unlimited time to talk to this person. So I was going over each discovery, where we found it, who found it. I was going all my details. And he got to the middle of the hall, and he goes, so you think dinosaurs are real, huh? And I'm like, I just told you all that. Half the stuff I was in the stories. So I said, yes, I do this too. Well, the main thing is people think that fossils are found only by experts. Well, this guy here was not an expert. He found this giant claw of a baryonyx, so we now call it baryonyx. What is that? It's not the claw of a raptor's foot claw, but it's a hand claw of this animal right here. And so this is something we have more of found in Britain. And the name baryonyx means heavy claw. And seeing this more complete part of the skull, we realize this is a very different kind of dinosaur. It's not a T-Rex, not an Allosaurus, it's not what we've known before. It's something different. So what's the big deal? We think baryonyx was the bear of its time. Now, there's this really fun thing called histology. We take bones, we study them and chemically test them and figure out what you eat. So you are growing up somewhere, I'm assuming in the Houston greater area, we can look at what your bones, the chemistry of your bones, and know where you're living. If you're in East Houston, West Houston, what chemicals are there. We can do a similar thing to dinosaur bones and figure out what they're eating. So Spinosaurus mainly ate fish. Oh, also we found a fish with the skeleton when it died. So that's more proof too if you're wondering about that. And so the Spinosaur group, this is a cousin of Spinosaurus, showed this trait of having these elongated skulls, these large claws, and being found near water and marsh environments. And so here's, again, every chart, family tree I show you on this on the globe, there's like 50 more possible genuses. These are the ones that are most well known or most studied. And so the number one guy here, of course, is our big boy Spinosaurus. And I say big boy because he's the biggest of them. Why? He has short legs. We'll add later on. But baryonyx is found here in England and the Iberian Peninsula. So pretty much where Spain and Portugal. And so these guys were known pretty well. There's one called Irritator, which is a fun story because there's a paleontology black market. People go, really? Of course, we're humans, we're involved. There's going to be a black market. And so the black market people found the skull, the front of a skull of this guy, and made the back of it pretty much out of fake material. Luckily, the government of Brazil got hold of it, and they took it to a museum, and they were trying to remove the fake part from the real part. And the scientists were literally so annoyed, they called it Irritator. That is the official genus. Suchomimus means crocodile mimic, so it's found in Niger, Africa. And so it's actually a relative of, well, closer to baryonyx than Spinosaurus. But this one here, Simosaurus, is only like 3 or 4 teeth that are confirmed. So you say, how do you get that look? Again, your family tree. Everyone in their family has these same kind of traits. And last but not least, we have these two guys here, Ethiopianarius, which is from Laos. So people often think of dinosaurs as the West, but it's really opened in the East in the last 2 decades. So Spinosaurus. So the documentary called Bigger Than T-Rex. That's on PBS if you've ever seen it before or heard of it. I encourage you to do your homework tonight. You may on social media see pictures of Spinosaurus in the water now, and some of you are like, what happened? How did they go from the Jurassic Park Spinosaurus to this? Well, it turns out there was a man named Abraham Neisser, and he went to Morocco, and he was, and I'm going to give you an abridged version of this story. The idea was there is a market in Morocco who you can buy invertebrates pretty easily. Some people get fossils, questionable how, legal, and they kind of sell them to tourists. He was there as a researcher getting his PhD, and he saw these bones. He goes, hey, this looks just like Spinosaurus stuff that Sturmer found over 100 years ago in Africa. And of course, the guy selling to him gets really scared because now you're an expert. When you're at the museum, you bring a fossil and go, hey, what is this fossil? And we go, oh, where'd you get it? A quarter of the people get really quiet and walk away. If you don't know, if you find invertebrates like clams, oysters in Texas, no one really cares. But if you find something with a backbone, there's laws on that. You can't I can't think of a dinosaur on my own without being at a museum or college. And so the idea is that when he asked this guy, where'd you get this fossil? The guy got really scared because he's like, are you an authority figure or what like that? But Abraham just wanted to find bones to do research on it, right? And so the story goes essentially, he gets some of the material, gets funding, comes back. And when I say, my wife always jokes to me about how tough of a paleontologist I am. When I go dig, I use sand cabins and hotels. He goes in the Moroccan desert with like armed men to protect him from people in the desert. Like think Star Wars kind of Tatooine lifestyle. And so he's like, I'm not just saying one's better, like he's doing like real paleontology, he's like dangerous, he could lose his life in some cases. And so what's going on is that he, at the time I met him, had discovered this much of it, well, parts of it, a Spinosaurus in the front. And so if you don't know, Jones Hall, he had a lecture here, and some really cool people, because they're right there, gave me tickets to it for my wife. And I could see his lecture, and so the next day he came to the museum. So I told my team, I said, hey guys, I teach a paleo class. I said, if you see, you know those wanted posters you have in the Old West? I said, if you see this man, find him, give him all access passes to the museum, and find me. And they're like, sir, what if you're in your class? I don't care, I need to talk to him more details. And so he told me that he found in this mountainside these parts of what seemed to be a juvenile or a subadult Spinosaurus, and it was a lot of the animal. But he said he couldn't tell me the rest of the story, which is like a cliffhanger. And I'm like, no, like, what? He goes, I'm going back next year. We found some pretty cool things already. But it turned out he actually found one with a tail. So why is that important? So he's arguing that Spinosaurus was somewhat aquatic. An example of this is bears. Bears, no. These are people who were born before 2000. So the idea is, very simply, bears are terrestrial, right? You might talk a lion or a wolf, but the idea is that polar bears live more in the water, on the ice, right? So Spinosaurus, we've seen that we're being pushed, or at least going towards the more amphibious swamp environment. They weren't marine animals, they weren't mosasaurs, ichthyosaurs, but they were going more to the oceans, or at least the freshwater systems. And then there was a clapback. Paul Sereno came, I think, last summer, and he gave a lecture, and he mentioned how him and his team found a Spinosaurus in Niger, Africa, and they're testing the same thing and saying, well, actually, it's more terrestrial. So right now, the girls are fighting. What I mean by that is, people ask me all the time, you know, paleontology, I'm all telling jokes and fun. There's a lot of angry, I don't mean like women, like mean girl culture, like there's meanness, like you're wrong, and here's why you're wrong. It's like, hey, guys, we're not curing cancer. We're talking about dinosaur bones that died, millions of years ago. And so if you look at, they're doing, because they found such a great specimen, or a partial specimen, they're looking at all the cross-section section, all the muscles attached, a lot more detail than we do tonight. And the idea is that, now, I will say the videos you see online of Spinosaurus just being in deep water, that's not, no one says that in the scientific community. The idea is to be on the water's edge, like a crocodile. And then Sereno's saying no, but the new paper from Niger says, actually the bones are very dense of Spinosaurus. So if you look at the bones of a manatee, as you do on Friday nights, the bones are very, very dense because why they're water animals. There were land ancestors who went into the water. And so the same thing we're seeing here. So that debate's still happening. So I'll see you in a year and tell you what they said. Now, speaking of that, Spinosaurus in particular has a good reason to be an ocean, or a marine animal, or an aquatic animal. It shares its environment with this guy here, Carnivores. So that's not T-Rex size, but a pretty large predator who's definitely a land animal, definitely eating red meat. Also, Deltadromeus here. I remember when I was a kid in the 1990s, children, and back to before iPhones, I remember seeing this in Nat Geo. It was a double page spread. I remember cutting it out and pasting it on something. And I like how everyone who was born before 2000 is like, yeah, I get that. Kids are like, what do you mean? Just copy and paste it. I literally copied and pasted, you know. But the idea is that this large predator here is something that would challenge Spinosaurus. And the main thing to point out is that look at Spinosaurus' face, it's very narrow. The Jurassic Park model has a big, round bulbous head. Spinosaurus have very thin skulls. They can't bite and tear anything. They're really just gotta be fish and swallow and whole, pretty much. Now, if we go further up our tree, we're going now up, we went past the Dilophosaurus, Coelophysis, the Ceratosaur, Allosaurus, Spinosaurus, and now we're going to see this group, the Allosaur group, basically. And so, oh, look at that handsome fellow. So, if you make a PowerPoint, you kind of forget what's in parts of it. So Allosaurus is important to me because I have actual experience with Allosaurus, because the other guys are from like Africa, South America. I'm an American paleontologist. I stayed in this general area. And so 2-3 years ago, I was digging with the Indianapolis Children's Museum, and they found an Allosaurus. And I remember it was so annoying because you find something that's really cool, you can't say anything. So, and actually, the pictures are all up close. They're just kind of creepy, not on purpose. If you take a picture of the mountainside, people can see it online and figure out where the site is and dig up the fossils. We don't want that. And so that's why they're all weird close-ups. But that Allosaurus there is now on display in the Indianapolis Children's Museum. And that was my first Allosaurus tooth. And so, again, people always ask you, why do you do paleontology? It's like, I like to fight. No, it's because you get to go in the middle of nowhere with no cell service, and you get to dig around with your nerdy friends and find cool things like that. And later that day, I was killed at a machine behind me. But the point is, if you want to find a fossil, you want the whole body. If you can't find that, find the head. If you can't find that, find the tooth at least, right? And so the tooth tells you a lot. Now, this wasn't a part of the animal's skull. It had washed away. So essentially, it was in a sand. This is really cool. It was in a sandbank with sandstone. It was laying there, and there was some shell mud here. So it died next to water and just kind of like got buried that way. And so the teeth would have fallen out of the animal and kind of fell over to the side. Okay, so Allosaurus, what's the big deal? The people think of dinosaurs. So Allosaurus, I feel so sorry for Allosaurus because he's not T-Rex. Every time I did a tour, kids are like, oh yeah, that's not T-Rex. I'm like, that's like me saying you're not your name. He has his own name, his own story. And the reason it's so sad is that Arthur C. Conan Doyle, when he wrote The Lost World, Allosaurus was the hero. So we have grown up in the T-Rex generation. T-Rex is the biggest, the baddest, etc. But Allosaurus was the #1 dinosaur known, primarily because there's more of them found everywhere in the American West. But again, there's so many of them, and I would be about that tall to it. So again, I'm 5'10", body like that. But here's why it's not T-Rex, if you're wondering. One, you have an Allosaurus foot. The metatarsals, the bones you have in the middle of your foot, dinosaurs walk by tippy toes like supermodels. The idea here is that the middle toe pinches off in Tyrannosaurus and not in Allosaurus. Again, this guy is like, you know that story, T-Rex is closer to us than it is to Stegosaurus. It's closer to Allosaurus. It's close to us than Allosaurus as well. The idea here is that this is a very advanced thing because it can turn and move faster. So Tyrannosaurus Rex was faster than Allosaurus, it was a bigger animal, but that kind of pinching off of the middle metatarsal allows it to move in different ways. The teeth are way smaller than T-Rex teeth. T-Rex teeth are like bananas, basically. So Allosaurus is hunting large animals, like long-necked dinosaurs. T-Rex is hunting things that are smaller than it, so it's kind of like a pit bull biting down on things. An example of this is the morph formation. So the Jurassic James, my nickname, that was actually in high school. I actually have dug more into Jurassic in Cretaceous Periods, so it kind of fell that way for the fates. But Allosaurus isn't even the biggest predator in its environment. There's other things that are larger than it too. And of course, the Theropods, these are not the scale to picture. These are huge animals. And so the idea is that we don't know if Allosaurus itself would take out a sauropod, but we do know that they are eating them. We find their bones and bite marks on them. We find adult bite marks on Allosaurus in teeny tiny, itty bitty baby bite marks. Now, we don't know if the Allosaurus is killing an animal and bringing it home to the babies. We don't know if it's eating them, maybe they're separate or just feeding on the side of that. We don't know that part yet. I'm sure one of the kids here will figure it out for us. But in the meantime, we know that we see their bite marks on these animals and know what's happening. So here we have the descendants of Allosaurus called carnivores, which essentially the name Stromer made up, the same Spinosaurus guy, he from this group too. So what Allosaurus is like Jurassic, about 44 million years ago. These guys are Cretaceous, middle to late Cretaceous. The most famous one of all is Giganotosaurus. Now, in Jurassic Park, Jurassic World Dominion, they refer to it as Giganotosaurus. It was discovered in 1990, I think 8 or 7. And Rodolfo Correa, the paleontologist of South America, he said Giganotosaurus. I realize now it was probably his accent, but I just kind of say how he said it. In paleontology, if you can spell it right in your paper, that's all that matters. But this guy is the top predator in South America, but so was Apatosaurus and Tyrannotitan, as well as Miraxis. These are all from the same part of Argentina, the same state or country of Argentina, but they're from slightly different ages. And so the Cretaceous period, I said 80 million years, there's early and late. Each of those times have 6 subdivisions of time. And so you say, James, what do you do at night? What are you up more? It's that's what you're like watching TV, I'm looking at the different layers of rock, trying to figure out who's at what environment. But why be so big? Well, the answer is very simple. These guys, we think, are sauropod killers. And what I mean by that is, if you look at Giganotosaurus, this animal is really huge. It just so happens the largest dinosaurs in the world are in South America mainly, and we have the largest predators, too. Now, in the Jurassic World movie, Giganotosaurus has this little spine here. That's weird. It's weird because the actual animal does not show that trait at all. But more importantly, it's a cousin called Concavenator in Iberia Peninsula who does have a little bump there. It's just this one little neural spine. I mean, and the really cool thing is that we have the whole back. So it's not that we're missing parts from guessing. That's how it looks actually. We don't know why. We have no idea. But, which Giganotosaurus itself, I mean, again, it's not, you think it's not that big, but the skull is very narrow. It's for slicing, compare scissors almost. In your own time, go on our paleontology wall, look at the Acrocanthosaurus, you'll see the skull from the front. It's very, very narrow. And so, again, Mapusaurus' cousin is found with Argentinosaurus, one of the largest dinosaurs known in science. This vertebra is like almost 5 feet tall. It's like to here. And so, again, we don't actually have proof that they're hunting these guys, but we know they're in the same environment. So we're looking for that evidence there, too. Now, Acrocanthosaurus is something that's really important. It's because it's found here in Texas. And so if you go to Dinosaur Valley State Park, I went last week ago, it was flooded, so time is always great. But in the river channel, you can find footprints of these two guys, Acrocanthosaurus and what was at the time called Pleurocetus, now we think it's some different dinosaur, because Pleurocetus was the state dinosaur of Texas. It turns out the animal we had, because it's a long neck, their bones are really big and got mixed up somewhat, so maybe 2 different animals. But the main thing is, when you go there and see these 2 models, these are the 2 in the track. That's a T-Rex and a Brontosaurus. There's a whole other story in itself than any Brontosaurus. But the footprints are here. Now, if you go to the main track site, there's police tape on it. And all you can do is sit there and look like that. Very sad. You can't touch them. You cannot touch them. They will beat you with a pipe. But I encourage you, I think I'm joking. That's why I wear long sleeves. The idea here that the tracks are kind of there. But if you get I encourage you to get waders, like wading boots. Go down the river, you can see the tracks right there of a sauropod long neck. These tracks right here, like that. That's the actor right there in our hall. It's about this many James tall. Back then, David, the curator, would let me actually stand on the map. Now I can't do it anymore, but that was a fun time. But like I said, you see the tracks here, basically. So why is it important to you and I? It's gonna sound weird, but I like talking to people who have questions. We're gonna have a Q&A at the end. And kids ask the coolest questions, because they don't have, calm down, say it this way, James. I have my formal education, obviously, but I do a lot of my own research. And when you learn on your own, you don't know what not to learn. I know when I would teach and tutor that I would tell my students, oh, learn this, not that, learn this. But when you're on your own, you just learning whatever you want to learn. And so the really cool thing is a kid asked me the other day, he goes, "Can those really big predators jump?" And I was like, I don't think so. And then I went to my brain library and said, wait a minute. So it turns out, the tracks in general, we have here the theropod, the footprints from the back feet and the front feet like this. They actually they don't have these flat bones. They're like Tarzan, how he walks in the Disney movie. So they have this kind of crescent-shaped front foot, and the back foot's really large. So we have the predator and the theropod here, the theropod long neck, and then the duckbill with the two-legged planes. So these footprints around all along here. The ones I'm mentioning now are like in Glen Rose right there. There's some near Leander. There's some all along this area here. This whole part of Texas is all limestone, some shallow ocean. So think of it this way. Texas was underwater during the Cretaceous period, and so all the limestone between West Texas and Dallas, that's all there. The coastline would have been along here, and so Cretaceous was in Oklahoma. It would, when the tide would go out, it would walk along the mud, leave footprints behind, and go back up there and out them and bear the footprints. So it turns out, when it was first discovered in the early 1800s, the New York Museum, Swiss Museum, came here and got the footprints and put them in their museum. They're in New York. So if you want to see these, they've been dug up here, they're in the museum there. But what I'm going to mention to you next is not the whole story. Those parts have been washed away. But we actually found proof of this event happening. So we saw in the original tracks that are gone now, the sauropod longneck was walking very quickly. Oh, right, you know this. Sauropods do not walk very quickly. They're really heavy animals. They're bigger than elephants. They're like land whales. So it was hurrying the walk. And then the predator was walking next behind it. It begins to speed up, and it gets right next to it. So the sauropod's running from the predator. We see that in the track site. Then the predator's tracks disappear for about 10 feet. And then it slams them on the ground again. Which means this predator had jumped on the long neck, grabbed onto it, and then it fell in the mud and skidded like that. We saw those tracks. The unfortunate thing is the footprints then turn towards private property, which is the greatest enemy of paleontologists. The state park, we can work with the state, but not private property. You get shot that way. The point is, we had proof that this animal could jump. You know that thing where how does a bumblebee fly? Well, it's happening. You can't question that. It's happening, right? We know that they can jump. We saw that track site. Now we're trying to do the math figure out how did it do it? Because something that big and heavy shouldn't be able to jump in the air. But it did. You see the tracks there. So sometimes the evidence comes before the research, right? Now, heading to our chart 2, we're going now to the last group of this theropod called Slorosaurs. Those are the ones that are I think T-Rex, raptors, and other dinosaurs. These guys may have had feathers, we're not entirely sure, but this group here has more proof. So the Slorosaur starts right here, and there's the Tyrannosaurs, and then, which we're going to end on, obviously. And then the raptors. Now, the other groups, like, you know that in Jurassic Park 1, when Dr. Grant and the kids are in the field, and those ostrich dinosaurs are running the field, and he goes, "Hey, Tim, what are those?" He's like, Gallimimus. Those guys are, Mimates. They are the fastest dinosaurs, period. We find their footprints, we find their measurements, they can run really quickly. They never were a dominant force in fossil record. Like, they're there, but like T-Rex ruled, Allosaurus ruled, these guys didn't. So that stays focused. The Therizinosaurs are essentially vegan raptors. And what I mean by that is that these dinosaurs are in the raptor family, they're close relatives, but they began to get really large, like kind of like pandas and begin in plants. And so they never really dominated. But the Dromaeosaurs, which are the Maniraptor group, which we'll go over here, well, Eumeniraptor, this is a group that loves birds, and particularly the Dromaeosaurs, or when you say the word raptor, that's slang. Dromaeosaurs is a proper term for it, means running lizard. So it's right there. So the most famous example of this is Velociraptor. Who's ever heard of Velociraptor? Of course, he's like the best publicist, right? So the idea is that Velociraptor, that you may not know, is only about that tall. Jurassic Park 1 was made bigger because of movies and species mix up. But the idea here is that this is my favorite fossil to talk about in history, is that this is a Velociraptor who's in a jiu-jitsu fight with a Protoceratops. And so, as far as diet goes, we think Velociraptor, one, is solitary, you find them by themselves. Two, they most likely mainly eat lizards, small mammals, like small things. Think of a coyote, basically. But would you be afraid of it? Yes. Have you ever been chased by a duck or a goose? Yeah. I have not, I'm sorry for you. But the point is, I hear it's terrible. So the idea is that these guys have the same, a goose is like that, it has such an energy that it knows it can murder you, I don't know how. But think of a raptor, it's lizard face but feathered body. We know they have feathers because their radius bone has little nodules where the feathers go through to the bone. And so the idea is that this animal is attacking the Triceratops, which is what stuff with sheep. And a sand dune fell over and killed both of them. It's just called the fight. It's like the worst day ever, right? It's called the fighting dinosaurs. Now, I do know more modern researchers say this may have been a really brave or stupid raptor. Because it's like, imagine it's like a cow. They're almost this tall but really heavy, right? So we're not sure if they're eating them very regularly, but that happened once. As far as raptors go, there's different types of raptors. We have the Deinonychus in our hall here. That's the one that Jurassic Park raptors are based on. It's about that tall in life. You're saying, well, why isn't it? This one's pretty big, Utahraptor. That one was named in 1993. So what major movie that changed my life clearly came out in 1993? Well played, I'll kill you later. That was a very good movie. That was good. I like good timing. Jurassic Park, of course. So the idea is that Utahraptor was discovered, and so the idea is that it was named the year the movie came out, so it was too late, right? There's a new toy, and there's a new toy in Walmart right now, and I got Jim Kirkland, the guy who actually named Utahraptor, to sign up for me. So yes, I don't know. I'm just really happy. Because he was signing books, and I'm like, could you sign this toy for me? And he's like, sure, whatever. And so, anyway. So, if we go further, going back to T-Rex, right, the T-Rex family. So, what's going on here is that what we know is T-Rex we know T-Rex itself, his family, but there's other things before him that have been really interesting in the last 20 years. The first one pointed out that in the Jurassic period, Tyrannosaurus rex itself lived between 68 and 65 million years ago in North America, from Canada, Saskatchewan, Canada, to West Texas, at the furthest. It has Jurassic ancestors, and initially found some in England and in China. Initially we thought, okay, which one was this Jurassic ancestor? We're still debating it. But by early Cretaceous period, we see all these Chinese Tyrannosaurs. So yes, your great American T-Rex is a Chinese export. That joke means different things now, sorry. So Belong here, about that tall, had feathers. Eutyrannus is the largest feathered tyrannosaur. Its feathers are about this long. And it's about this tall, about 30 feet long. So and again, we have this guy here. So they're all found in China. I will say this, just an observation in the field. There's a lot more coming out of China right now because their government is funding a lot of paleontology research. I know Jim Kirkland mentioned he kept getting offers to go to China and do research, but he has grandkids and morals, so he didn't go. So, yeah. Yes, I'll be there now. But the idea here is that basically there's more research going on there. I mean, why did Dr. Grant go to Jurassic Park twice? Funding. Anyway, so by late Cretaceous we have Asian Tyrannosaurs and North American species. Now, Tyrannosaurus rex's closest relative is not its North American cousins. It's actually Tarbosaurus in Mongolia. So it turns out again that Bering Strait connection between Asia and Africa was a thing even at that time. And so so much so that Tarbosaurus genus was Tyrannosaurus rex, Tyrannosaurus for a point. And they said, well, it's a little bit more slender, a little different, a little different time, so they give it a name. But the Tyrannosaurus family in general, why is it so popular? Because two things. One, T-Rex is found in America. That's not like a joke. What's going on is it was found in North America right before World War I. And the idea is that on the world stage, until that point, we really weren't a huge superpower. I mean, the Spanish-American War was a thing. But after World War I, America stood up on the world stage. We have our movies, and he's in every movie. He's a great publicist. King Kong, Jurassic Park, all, et cetera, right? There are other Tyrannosaurs too. Think of this guy as like a grizzly bear, and there's like a black bear, panda bear, stuff like that. Different kinds of bears. They're the same kind of animal, but different sizes of species. But then we have the animal itself. So why is T-Rex so cool? The other large predators, Carcharodontosaurus, Giganotosaurus, Spinosaurus, they weren't bone crushers. These large teeth here are for crushing through bone because why? We find T-Rex poop about this big with Triceratops bones in them. Now, it's not that he's supposed to eat bones, he just can't reach it with his little hands, so he's just biting through everything. And hyenas, for example, their coprolites are actually, or their droppings are actually white because they're breaking down the calcium. So they're actually designed to eat the bone. T-Rex has after Triceratops bones, meaning that he's not supposed to eat the actual bone. It's just going through a system and he passed. One thing to point out too, this is his cousin, Gorgosaurus. The museum had a movie years ago, my wife told me about it. She was like, it was from the predator's perspective. And so we, growing up, look at back in the 1990s, the Discovery Channel would play actual documentaries about animals. It was an event, every night. Now it's like they're building cars or something in houses, I don't know. But the point is, they would show, you see a gazelle being chased by a lion, your first thing is, oh, go gazelle.
But the lion has a hard life. Predators have very difficult lives. I mean, we as humans are the top predator. We have drones and stuff. But for an animal, you're hunting and killing every time you can. So the question comes along, well, is T-Rex a scavenger or is T-Rex a hunter? Who votes scavenger? Who votes hunter? Who's just not voting? Yeah, right, surely. The idea, give a voice. So the idea here is, the idea of T-Rex being a scavenger is based primarily on Jack Horner's research and his students, pretty much. My argument is he's both, and we know because one, we have found duckbills like Montosaurus with bite marks near tails. The duckbill was a juvenile when the attack happened, and the animal got away. There's a bite mark that matches T-Rex tooth. And if you get bitten and die, you don't heal. You have to survive to continue like that. So we do know that even in our museum we do, with Triceratops and T-Rex are fighting each other. Very rarely do you see an adult predator attacking an adult herbivore one-on-one. They're going to go after the juveniles, the weak, the sick, etc. It's why gazelles, when they see a cheetah, they don't just stand there. They start jumping up and down and saying, how strong I am. Because why? That way the ones who aren't strong can stand out and be hunted. It's kind of a jerk move, technically. And that's just, But the idea is that, so we know Tyrannosaurus will hunt and attack living things. There is a Tyrannosaurus cousin, they found a duckbill pretty much. It was entirely preserved, except for the elbow. So the animal must have been washing down a river. Its elbow was exposed through the sediment. And the Tyrannosaurus cousin walked by and go, oh, cool, meat, and started eating that with that elbow. Because if not, we're eating everything else. So we're seeing their scavenging and hunting on both ends, right? Now, again, breaking the rules, right? They told me I took the picture, I can't ever post the fact that I stood on the mountain, so this is the whole thing. I don't work here anymore. So the point is, what, you fire me? Anyway, so the idea is that we have Y-Rex. So why is Y-Rex such a big deal? Have y'all seen the movie we have on Y-Rex, some of you? Yes, okay. My friend Colin's in it, pretty cool. And so Y-Rex is important because in 2003, they discovered it. And what's really neat about Y-Rex, he has the two little fingers. So as I showed you earlier, the Tyrannosaur ancestors had longer arms. So they're getting smaller, basically. I don't want to say on purpose. They're not evolving on, they're not choosing these smaller arms. They're focusing more on a bigger bite than grasping. Allosaurus was a brawler. You would go in the bar, see a sauropod, get the eye, and they fight it out in the field, right? Or a Stegosaurus. T-Rex was going around just biting and crushing it. He was dominating the environment. So these arms are getting smaller and smaller. We can assume they would have evolved, they would have went away eventually, because they have a cousin called Mononychus who has one little finger on his hand. It's not that big. And so this guy, we see that happening to the tail was bitten off. Tyrannosaurs have a thing called face biting. So anyone has a sibling and you were fighting as a kid, you're hitting each other in the face and all that. Well, they don't have arms to do that as well, so they just bite into the face, which sounds awful to me personally. But predators have bad breath. I'm trying to make you realize this. How this is a T-Rex. I love a T-Rex, but it was a gross animal. It would have smelled funny. It would have but very dog-like. My dogs. It would kind of how dogs will kind of play. I mean, bigger, smart animals do that. Tend to do that. But are there any questions? I think they get mad at me for going over, and I didn't go over this time, did I? At least yes, I go over. Okay, good. Okay, so when I would usually behind the scenes tours I do, normally I see everyone who's laughing has been here before. So it was supposed to be just one tour of the whole paleo hall, and it went over 3 hours. And so they made it 3 different tours, and it went over, each one went over, and then they made 6 tours. And so that's why I gotta keep it short, I know that a Q&A from there. Oh, also you can feel free to apply. So, the dinosaur bone, I need that back before you leave. Okay, so as long as I know who you have, okay. It's the Allosaurus cast. So are there any questions about these predators, dinosaurs? Yes, I can't pay you if I go up like this. Yes.
Why do small arms continue to
Okay. Oh, sorry. Before you guys, is there the thing? Yes.
Before you leave.
Yes. Okay, so some nerd drew Dinosaur Dynasties. So it's a Spinosaurus, it's a Pharaoh. So if you want a copy of that, you can have it. Anyway, the answer is, so why are the arms so small and what's the reoccurrence? So it's not that they are, that they're choosing small arms. The idea is that they're evolving towards certain traits. So the Allosaurs, that lineage, evolved with sauropod long necks. We see the earliest ones, they're kind of tracing their kind of coevolution. The T-Rex relatives, they evolved with horned dinosaurs and the duckbills. Those animals are usually more bony, they're usually faster, so they need to kind of catch and grab and kind of bite and bag down onto them. So we're thinking that their heads are just getting bigger and bigger to fight and crush versus having arms to wrestle with it. Because Tyrannosaur arms were in Jurassic, they were pretty like raptor arms. They would have been very useful. But it's not until like the mid-Cretaceous that they started going getting smaller. One reason behind that is the Allosaurian lineage. Those guys ruled from mid-Jurassic to mid-Cretaceous and began dying out at that point. So Tyrannosaurs were small that whole time. They were, I mean, I say small, they were like this big or smaller. And they get to like Cretaceous and they get really big. Because why? They were suppressing them, the Allosaur lineage. So that's why I kind of framed the dynasty. So you think about the kings of England, like the different Scots, the Tudors and all that, the Stuarts and all that. There's different lineages of ruling groups. And I kind of went over the nature of them, but the idea is that the Allosaurs were the main rulers for most of the Mesozoic. And the Tyrannosaurs came in at the last minute. So those traits were already kind of selected against, and then they started losing their arms to bite more. That's a short, it's much more complicated than that, but that makes sense. Okay. Okay, who was, yes. Oh, so the main cause for Allosaurs and Carnivores. So Allosaurs, it wasn't just Allosaurs, the late Jurassic had an extinction event, and right now we officially do not know what caused it. So the Cretaceous meteor impact is volcanic activity. The end Jurassic, we're not sure. There is an impact found in South Africa. There's something found that they're looking at right now. But I remember when I was like a kid, you see the Jurassic extinction of all these volcanoes, you see Cretaceous with a meteor impact. Jurassic, just everything changes and no one says what happened. So that's one of the questions that are being kind of studied right now by the paleontologists. So for Allosaurus itself, it died out in the Jurassic period. And in Cretaceous, with the mid-Cretaceous with the large southern predators, they just died out too, and they were replaced actually by a group called megaraptors. And I didn't include them tonight because when megaraptor was first discovered, they found this giant claw in South America, and the assumption was it was a giant dromaeosaur. And the guy actually came here years ago. He said he presented it saying, "Here's this giant dromaeosaur claw." And then we found more of their cousins in Australia, I think some in Asia, I think there's one in somewhere else. And they actually had the claw in the hand too, like the Baryonyx family. So these megaraptors are a group that are a new dinosaur dynasty that we are realizing that took over after the Carnivores did. It doesn't mean that they outcompeted them. There could have been a change in the events, a change in the environment. They just died off, and then those came along. But we think they replaced them actually. Which is why Carnivores is kind of weird too, because Abelisaurs were always under, kind of like how Ceratosaurus was under Allosaurus. It was in the environment. The Abelisaurs were under the Carnivores, and often they all die off, except for a few, the Carnivores and the Dinosaurs. And so that's kind of a weird thing to happen. We don't know why. To answer your question, we don't know why. That's what you have to do when you're my age. I'm not being funny, I'm serious. Like, you need more paleontologists. Yes. Okay, sorry.
Professor, thank you so much for your wonderful lectures and your contribution to paleontology. I have two questions.
Sure.
One, in the vast constellation of paleontology research, is there some missing link that every paleontologist would like to discover?
Yes,
Or is there a missing link out there?
Well, I mean, missing link's it's a charged term. That implies A and C to be somewhere.
Yes.
The mid-Cretaceous, early late Cretaceous, is a huge gap in fossil record.
And why is that?
The rocks that are exposed in America will show it, and paleontology, as we know it in the West, started in Europe, moved across to America. It is now going to South America, Africa, everything too. Initially, it was just European Americans going there. Now the scientists know the region doing our research. And so what's going on is that for some reason, the rocks that are exposed are just a random gambit, that those age rocks aren't just available all the time. And so let's say 80 to 70 million years ago, lots of dinosaurs. 65, like that time at 100 million years ago in North America, we find very few because the rocks are not available or the sites we go to aren't full. When I was in undergrad, we were in the hill country, and there was areas where the oysters and coal like that. So we would see one road cut, and it was just full of fossils. And we go down like 100 feet, nothing. Think about when you're coming on a plane, you see a neighborhood full of houses, and you see woods, nothing. So like some animals just go to certain areas, and we're thinking the rocks are just not the right age. I know it sounds like we're passing a buck, but we have to keep digging and searching and looking because every 2 years, I'll see something that blows my mind. It's like, oh, I had no idea. But the megaraptors are something that I remember reading in the books as a kid. There's these things we were finding, kind of figure it out, and now they're trying to realize what they are. The Theropods, when I was a kid, we had no idea what those things were. They were just giant claws everywhere, claws this big. And now we're like, oh, we found enough of them in Asia and everything. We can compare the bones and go, oh, it's this. It's a pot-bellied raptor with long, 3-ounce crest nails. So like that's something that we didn't think about. Sorry. Sorry. Did I answer your question?
Yes.
The first one?
Well, the second one
okay.
is there a debate in your field with respect to feathers and the purpose
Oh.
of feathers?
Oh,
What is
yeah.
what is that debate?
Which one?
Oh, yes.
That's our night, guys. The first thing with feathers that we assume feathers were flight, because the first feather thing found with Archaeopteryx in the 1800s, when Charles Darwin wrote Origin of Species, he didn't want to publish it at first because he knew it would hit the fan. But then Wallace was coming to the same conclusion, and he's like, okay, I got it there. So Archaeopteryx is an early bird thing, but in the 1990s in Liaoning, China, which is right north of North Korea, I didn't go over that area because the dinosaurs weren't really well. I mean, the Utyrannus, that one's not from there. But the idea is that they're not big dinosaurs, they're just like little dinosaurs. And so the feathers on these guys were debated for like a decade of, are they feathers or not? And the question was, are they scales, are they, like that? So we found one called Caudictris, which we have a copy of here, full tail plumage. So we know they're feathers. The assumption was, well, they can fly, none of these guys can fly. So we think there's insulation. That part of Liaoning, the environment, you can see from the rocks, that was colder than other parts of the world. So where T-Rex lives, for example, was like a hot, like Montana looked like Louisiana. So it didn't really need insulation, it was a bigger animal. And Liaoning, if you're this small and it's very cold, you need insulation. And also the cop-out answer is what we all say. In anthropology, when you're studying any kind of cultural thing, and you're not sure what it is, we say it's religious or spiritual, because we can't figure out. I mean, it's not good. It's like, you know what your shoes are for, you know what your clothes are for, you know what your camera's for. If you find a cross, what do you do with that? It must be some kind of ceremonial thing, right? It's not a religious thing. In paleontology, if we're not sure what it is, we often say it's sexual selection. Because in humans, we do weird things. Why would, I mean, not to call it, but why would we buy a fancy sports car, guys? We're trying to get attention. I mean, the speed's fun. Why would you have this weird plumage of things in your head? All these guys have these weird crests and bumps in their head. They're not for hitting each other and fighting. It's for display, most likely. So again, we can't prove that it's a sexual display thing, but it has no other purpose. We kind of say it must be that. And so Tyrannosaurus have all these bumps and things in his skull because why? There's keratin, some kind of a structure there to display, right? That's the shortest answer.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Oops, okay, I'll take you. Okay.
The picture of you,
So.
the picture of you with, you said it was your first,
Allosaurus tooth.
Allosaurus
Yes.
tooth. That implies multiple after that?
Yes.
What does your personal, fossil collection look like?
God.
Catalog.
Okay.
Like,
So-
what do you have, like, for personal collection?
So the way it works in the museum world is that if you're digging for a museum, you don't keep what you find. So everything I found in those pictures, I'm like, this is cool. And I wrote on the paper on a card, discovered by Jurassic James at this site, and I say, goodbye, and goes to a specimen. I do have a personal collection because I'm not a curator. I'm like in this weird middle ground where I'm not a curator, I'm an educator, whatever. So I have, and people who are laughing know who I am, I have over 100,000 minerals, seashells. I mean, I get tiny things too that I used to teach. I actually had 4 classrooms at one point. It was ridiculous. And I had all my stuff displayed on the walls, like drawn and everything. So I use that for teaching collection. And my ultimate goal, honestly, is to have the joke I always say is, one of my heroes is George Washington, have a mountain burning without slaves. I want this big building with my collection on display, and not going to teach with that, because you have to specify those things nowadays. But again, nothing I ever found for a museum, I own. I always get things, and actually the way I get stuff usually is that it's not something that has information on it, because everything you have data. And I think the Black Hills like, hey James, you teach kids, here, take this bucket of stuff. I'm like, cool, Or the White House Museum's like, hey, this stuff was discovered by the rancher, and so we don't have any data on it, but you teach people, take this. So I'm like, yes, of course, I'll take our free stuff. So, but nothing I collect is simply good, great. Museum quality to the museums, right? Make sense?
Yeah.
Cool. I have some kids, yeah. How do carnivores take out sauropods? Well, our first guess is it didn't at first. If it could just wait for it to die, that'd be way much easier. You know how like you want food and then you can make your own sandwich or your parents can do it for you? Let nature do it for you? No, but the idea is that we think that they would get numbers, like 3 or 4 would get together and try to chase a sauropod who was probably sicker or something like that. So one thing I could give you perspective, when I was a kid, back in the 1990s, I would watch these animal documentaries, and a part of paleontology is like zoology studies. And so anytime elephants aren't normally killed by lions, but there's a couple examples where these lions in this one region started eating elephants. They would pretty much like mob it. And they would try to separate them from the herd, because elephants are very strong. I mean, elephant herds are much more organized. They're so organized, they kick out the young mammoths and everything out of the herd. But the idea, I like how I'm doing to audience of one. No, but the idea is that sauropods, their brains are as big as like this. They are not organizing their lives really well compared to a whale or a dolphin like that, or an elephant. And so if you just scare one away from the others, if it's young, it's injured, you can take it out with enough of you. And also we think about eating 3 meals a day. They have to if you just eat once really good, you're good for a while, right? So they can just spend days harassing this injured sauropod until it's time to fight. And they go, okay, now we can go in there and do that. I didn't want to go too graphic though. That's cool. Yes, let's get the other question. Then we'll go back. Go ahead, sure. Okay, I'm sorry, I can't see. It's like looking at God, you know. Okay, yes, question was next. Yeah, you. Okay, yes, go. Concave matter, yes. No, so camels, actually not all camels have humps. The idea here is that the modern camels have the humps for like their desert animals. Camels evolved in North America, and they migrated, we had giant giraffe-sized camels in Africa and here in America too. They migrated out, and they died out here during the Ice Age, and were brought back by Jefferson Davis before the Civil War. So the idea is that we think the early camels didn't have humps. They were in North America, it was grassy, they didn't need the extra energy. Nutrients, but if you go to the desert region, like Asia, Mongolia, you would need that extra nutrients to travel long distances. So we think that concave matter, also a camel's hump isn't bone, it's just fatty tissue or fat tissue. This is actual neural spine. So most likely it's some neural spine, little bumps in your back that stick up. It's just really long. So we're thinking it's probably, the idea of it being a hump fulfilling nutrients, we don't see it, that's not a theory that's being pushed really. When Spinosaurus was first discovered, Stromer thought it made a hump. But he realized, no, it's so thin, this neural spine's so thin, because compared to a bison, they're probably a fail. And the benefit of the fail is it stands up and makes it look bigger. And if you deal with any other animal, you want to, mountain lions, you get bigger to scare them. Maybe it's for mate selection, attention, scaring up other predators, but we don't think it was probably for a camel or something. Yeah, someone in the back, I know, there's a lot of kids. There's a lot of kids here, look at this. That was very clean tonight. Yes. How are you so awesome? I try. No, but there's a question for you, sorry. Sure.
We prefer to study biology, paleontology.
Fight going out there, guys. But I prefer to study which one?
Biology, paleontology, or geology.
Oh, well, see, paleontology is supposed to go through biology when you get because you can't get a bachelor's degree in paleontology in America. And so I didn't know that, so I got a geology first. And so I would say, well, actually, I'll say it this way. My first love is paleontology. When I see like documentaries of dinosaurs, I go on like that. There's something in my brain that lights up that I can't explain. I have 1,000. No, I have more than that. I have thousands of dinosaur toys in my house. So like that, just like biology. I'm thinking more like medicine and also cells and all that. That's not really my area. My second love is geology. I'm a really professor. Now, officially, when I worked here, I would always say I love mineralogy because the president of the museum loves mineralogy. He's not my check. But paleontology is my first love. Yes, there's a kid over there. Here, yes.
Why do carnivores have 2 horns?
Well, usually actually, good question. So why do carnivores have 2 horns? This thing called bilateral symmetry, most animals have 2 of the same horn. Now, its cousin in India, Rajasaurus, had 1 horn in the middle, which is like a unicorn, but not pointy, just like that. We don't know why. Usually having 2 horns implies, it's like your ears, or your nostrils. Your smelling, which direction you're coming from, your hearing, first mouth coming from. But you only have 1 mouth, you're eating, everything. Your eyes looking for distance. We're thinking the horns maybe because they're either displaying a certain way, or if they are using for fighting, they're going to maybe fight this way or that way. That's probably why. But most of these guys have 2 of everything. Rajasaurus, and I think Dinosaurus' cousin in Madagascar, they had 1, which is weird. But they're the outliers, kind of. Yes.
Okay, a lot of apex predators have a very complicated bone structure.
Yes.
Do the theropods have to?
We believe they would have. The one thing that's the thing, animal behavior is really hard to tell even today. Like I'll go out in public and see young people walking around like, what are they doing? They're looking down and the whole world's around them. Funs. So behavior is hard. It's hard to tell if the animal, how it looks when we have partial skeleton. Much less what it eats, if it's male or female. Those are things that I have enough hope and possibility that when you're my age, they'll probably figure things out. But behavioral things are like the last frontier of paleontology because behavior is something we can't easily study from bones that have been sun-dried for most years. And so we do see the crest on their heads. That implies some kind of interaction with each other. They're doing something. We find them together sometimes. Now, finding a group of dinosaurs together doesn't mean that they live together. They could have been washed to the same area. But In general, those crest structures imply some kind of interaction with each other. Hermits don't dress really nice. Who are they trying to impress? If you're with other people, you put your clothes on, you have to be clean, take a shower, kids. So we're thinking that we can derive from that, but no one really studies behavioral things for the most part. Yes? Yeah, sure. Just everyone's watching. This is great.
I've seen videos and I've watched some videos about dinosaurs and land before time.
Yes.
Like the shark tooth.
Yes.
Jump hundreds of meters. And it's like, no, you can't do that.
Yeah, not that far. That's a movie. So yeah, cartoons.
How long was this rock when you said there's tracks that a place rock that I've been to has tracks of the African dinosaurs jumping out of theropod,
Yes.
jumping because like you said, we don't know how it happened. The video said when a giant dinosaur theropod would jump like that, their legs would shatter.
Yes. What video? I'm not sure. No, I mean, no. But the thing is, that's something that's what we're saying. The math we have looking at these things suggests that it shouldn't do that, but it did it. So the unfortunate thing is that layer of tracks has been washed away. There's multiple layers, but the idea is we saw it happen. So that's why we're saying, well, we need to redo our math, right? The example I give you is Isaac Newton. He was trying to figure something out, and he created differential calculus. Which, think about that. He created a new kind of math to figure out the situation. That's what PhDs do. Is that you're trying to push the boundaries of the information. Like, anyone can memorize all the facts, but to say, well, why is it this way, prove how it's this way, and get to attack the whole world, that's what they're doing. So, yes, that documentary you may have watched said it should have showed their legs. But we see these tracks that show the jump. So we're like, well, clearly, I mean, it's not how else you explain it, running into a prey, it's feet going away, and then like that, that's clearly a jump, right? So, again, someone could look at it in 10 years and go, actually it means this. I don't know. But the idea is that we see it happening there. And I really appreciate you saying, I rock your world. Also, while the lights are up, oh, okay, we're doing something. Okay, I'm seeing more people I recognize now. The lights are. Anyway, but I have one more question. Thank you. Okay, who's yes, okay.
I was curious. So for we get a source with a little slime thing, and the little skeleton and whatnot doesn't really look as accurate. But with the Acrotantosaurus, however, was that more of like a display thing or a heat?
So acro spine. So basically the neural spine is pretty thick. So that may have been more of a hump like structural. It's not. We think of Dimetrodon and that cell-back thing in the Permian. Those guys have very thin neural spines, so have a thin cell. If it's very thick, we think about the bison's hump. And so acro may have just this big hump on its back, which even makes it weirder that it jumped because it has this kind of encumbering movement. But the one thing I remember from biology, that I took those earlier classes, is life. We'll find a way now. Life. Couldn't take a shot. No, life bends the rules. There's things that we see should happen mathematically like that, and life has a way to cheat the system. And that, so again, that's why paleontology seems like it's kind of done. Like, oh, we have all these like there's so much more perspectives out there that I don't even know what to think about. I told my professor raptors had feathers. He was like, no way! I'm like, here's a paper that shows that, like that was, 1,000 years ago. The point is, the views in technology are changing. So now when we dig, it's much more like CSI. It's much more detailed, much more copying, taking pictures of everything, because someone in 30 or 100 or 40 or 100 years could look at the exact same site and go, oh, we now know this, therefore this. And that's why it's so important for the public to not just take bones and like call museums and let us know and colonies. So yes, you and them go. Yes.
How did dinosaurs evolve from?
Well, that had from dinosaurs. Basically, think of it this way: how are we not fish, right? So there's evolutionary pressures. This is like a big question. So basically, when you say birds, especially, this is going to be a painful thing. So biologists will get mad at me when I say dinosaurs are birds. They're like, no, they're not. I'm like, well, I mean, if you look what a bird is, you look what a dinosaur is, it overlaps. And so at what point does it break from being bird to dinosaur, right? That's what you're probably asking in some ways. And so the first thing that we would call a bird, like you recognize as a bird, non-dinosaurian, would be the Jurassic, or most likely Archaeopteryx. That's the one I was taught in college. But there are things in the Cretaceous period that have more, that are like truly duck-like structures. Somewhere in that point it broke off, where the bones were certain hollowness, the tails changed, their dynamic changed. So those charts I showed you, all the family tree, the red letters, all that, that's the part that I usually try to hide from the public because it's very annoying. But every dinosaur group, someone has to write a paper saying, here are all the criteria to make it this thing.
And here's what it makes like this. I'm comparing like that. And so that's what most PhDs are debating about. So at some point, there's I can email to you probably, a list of all the things that make a bird, and when most theropod dinosaurs lose those traits, which is why as we went up the tree, there was like the ceratosaurs, they were further away from the bird group. We get to the raptor area, they're closer to the birds. So the thing is, we have this bird criteria, and as we were going down the tree, we're seeing less of those bird traits. So somewhere on that last slide is where, from the University of Maryland, that's where you would see the traits say, these are birds now. I can't remember the top of my head, but that's that chart. Yeah, we'll show that. Okay, yes, you're like doing that thing. Yes. So the Ankylosaurus evolved into something. No, when the meteorite struck, that was game over. The Ankylosaurus was the largest of the Ankylosaurids. Just like T-Rex had a family tree and all the other guys, every dinosaur had a family tree. And I often spend time drawing these trees for several weeks on end. But the idea is that the earliest Ankylosaurus thing that we can recognize is early Jurassic. It's actually found in Arizona. It's a little thing, Sculidosaurus. It's on 2 legs, has little armor plates. There's one in Britain that's a little bit bigger. And though these guys are essentially the earliest Ankylosaur ancestors, we can track them from early, middle, late Jurassic to early, late Cretaceous. And then the meteorite struck that within for Ankylosaurus. We get armadillo things in the Ice Age and before that, who were not relatives, but are convergent evolution. They have all the same traits, but they're different animals entirely. Okay, people up there, okay, I'm seeing hands more. Okay, yes. Yes, I'm looking at you. Maybe one of you, yes. Just start talking, whoever. That's very good. He's a very famous dinosaur. Still big, right? Yes. So dinosaurs and crocodiles evolved around the same time. So the first true crocodiles that are defined by paleontologists are Jurassic Age. Well, they had ancestors in the Triassic period. When the other crocoid things that out at that extinction event, it gave the modern croc ancestors the opportunity to kind of grow into that environment. Dinosaurs and crocs lived side by side. They were in, all the environments. Often sites, dinosaurs in North America, will find dinosaur bones and crocodile bones. So they're seen side by side. The question is, why are crocodiles here and dinosaurs are not? Crocodiles could, being cold-blooded or ectodermic, you can eat less food, you can be small, you can burrow. Thus, a warm-blooded like a lion, or you and I have to eat every 2 days or whatever, a croc could go like 6 months without you. So if a meteor impact happens, a climate shift, they can survive that better than something needs to eat regularly, right? That's kind of the answer. I mean, in the same ballpark, I bored you, sorry. So over here now, somebody you, yes, you. So why is the Sahara? So North Africa has a lot of predators and very few herbivores. We have no idea. In the early Permian, in Texas, we have Dimetrodon, all these carnivores, and they're just eating, that's a big mystery too. But in North America, with T-Rex, we have Tyrannosaurus Rex, Triceratops, and Ankylosaurus ductiles. That's more of a, not normal, but we would expect to see in the environment. Very few predators, a lot of herbivores. North Africa, we see the opposite of that. So the number one hypothesis right now is that there was this giant river that ran from Morocco, essentially, to what we now call Morocco, to Egypt, and there's always fish there. And so clearly there's big longnecks and some kind of duckbill relatives in North Africa that the carnivores were eating. But Spinosaurus, in order to support, there's like a numbers game. How do you support this many carnivores in the environment? We think that's why we think Spinosaurus is eating fish. We have found 24-foot long fish with bite marks or Spinosaurus teeth in their vertebra. We found that the Spinosaurus histology shows they're eating fish. So that's why it's kind of offsetting that demand. But it's still a weird thing to find. But then again, why is it weird? Because we're used to seeing what we already see. So. Well, mostly Morrison. So Morrison, there's a lot of carnivores too, but Morrison's the late Jurassic with all the long necks I showed you earlier, where I dig mainly. There's so much long necks, that's a lot of meat to kind of feed. That makes more sense to us mathematically, that there should be that many large herbivores and carnivores. North Africa's weird. It's more carnivores than herbivores. That's what's really weird. And so I know they're finding new ones more recently, herbivores in that region, but it's still an offset kind of in a way that's unusual. So, yeah, we don't know why. It's just, we think the fish are helping that. Okay, sure, okay. Okay, yes, you then.
Let's say hypothetically, so directly from Jurassic, that seeing is on the side.
Oh, yeah, I didn't do it for time. I didn't want to go over. But if you look at the acro, and if you go in our hall, and actually, oh, speaking of that, shameless plug, I'm doing tours. And so if you, yeah. Hamilton fans. So the idea here is, if you look at the acro, like when I was working out, we'd get on a ladder and be weird sometimes. And if you look at the allosaurs and the acro, their eyes, their nose is blocking, so they can't quite see in front of them, but they know how a bird kind of pops their head. The T-Rex, if you look in front of him, his nose dips down, he can look directly at you. He has stereoscopic vision. So stereoscopic vision, meaning you and I have it too, our eyes overlap. When you look at one of our eyes to kind of see, and the other eye will touch death. So the idea is, I had a friend who had an eye injury, it healed, but he had a patch on, and he was driving, and he had trouble seeing like when to turn. So, because you need your depth perception. And so Tyrannosaurus Rex could definitely see you. It's the part of it, we scan the brain, what the brain should be, the brain cavity, thank you. Had a long day. And so, several meetings in my life. And so the part of the brain we kind of reproduce in these models show that the sense of eyesight and smell are really strong, good. So dinosaurs, at least the Tyrannosaur and his cousins, could definitely see equal to us, if not better. Birds generally have better eyesight than mammals. And so it would definitely see you. There's no question about that. Because its eyes will be directly and they overlap, and so it's kind of unsettling. Yes, I don't know what's that. Yes. I can't hear, I'm so sorry. There's a dinosaur had broken. Oh no. So yeah. So the question is, has the dinosaur ever broken through the family tree? No. The family tree we have is saying whose ancestry. There was back in the 1990s, there was a show called Mari, where people didn't know who their paternity was, and they would film the stage, and they were like, "This child is the father," and then the guy would be like, "No, forget that baby, it was terrible," or "It's not my baby." He'd do a dance, like it was a whole thing. And my boss, Kelsey, thinks it's funny. I'm like, that's terrible. The point is, your lineage goes back. So you have your ancestors, we all have ancestors. That chart I showed you are all ancestry charts. Animals don't quite jump from different ancestry. Now, we have misinterpreted things before and said, oh, it's in this family, found more, oh, actually it's in this family. That happens sometimes. We don't tell you about that part. But the idea here is the Theropods, those really big, the raptors who drew big, been vegan, they are predators, that family, but they begin to evolve herbivores. So I used to tell people, oh, theropods ate meat. Well, now we know, or maybe at least bugs or something, that group may have eaten other things too. So it's copying herbivores, but it's not breaking a tree. Makes any sense. And do know for me there's no stupid question because I had to ask every question before I know the stuff. Yes, no one hears me. Yeah, yes, you.
What do you think about certain dinosaurs in the era, like Saurophagus getting bumped into Allosaurus?
You're trying to start a fight. Okay, so the thing is, there's an animal called Saurophagus. It's like an Allosaurus, but it's really big. And I did a video on this already, but it doesn't matter anymore. And so they looked at it again and said, oh, actually, a skeleton showed that it's probably an Allosaurus. Okay, there's two parts of this story. One, when you name a genus, you put your name in the records of paleontology forever. Make sure they get the dinosaur thing out there. So there's, it's true as a poem too. There's, what's it called? Lumpers and splitters. There are some people who say there should just be more species, and some who say no, there's less species. And that's like the thing in every anyone who's discovering species is dealing with this. Especially extinct. And so, Saurophagus, me personally, I always thought it was a big Allosaurus. But the paper seemed pretty solid, and I don't have a PhD in Allosaurids, so I was like, sure, that's fine. And so someone's gonna go, actually look at these parts, it should be this group again. I'm fine with that. A lot of the ones that bother me the most are when they find a few fragments, and they go, it's this family group. And I can see, I'm trained up to looking, okay, this is true or not, or this is not true, but I understand this or not. But sometimes I'm like, this is only like a fragment of tooth, and you're telling me a whole new genre. I question that too. But it's something that I can't say much on because people get really, really mad about that because you're killing their genuses and their careers. Which I know, scientists are people too. And so, we're people too, But the idea is that people get really heated about that thing. And that's why I don't want to talk about it because I don't want to get hunted down and beat the pipes, but other paleontologists. Yes, but I think that I personally am leaning more towards grouping more groups if they're fragmented, right? Yes. Yes, you.
Okay. I have a question about the dinosaurs.
Sure.
So I know ancestrally they're very closely related to the sort of raptors. Right?
Yes.
And their ancestors were carnivores, and then they eventually split and became like sort of a herbivorous niche.
Yes.
I want to know, have we found any sort of in-between stages? Because obviously they didn't suddenly become herbivores.
Yes, in Utah, Falcarius. So, okay, calm down. Jim Kirkland, I showed you earlier, he found Falcarius. Well, not him, it's not just one guy. One man history, no. He found Falcarius. This is early Cretaceous relative of this animal. So it looks like a weird-looking raptor. So that the people who were doing the real, like to me, the Western stuff, is that they're looking at these lineages from the base of the tree because these ancestors look alike. So it's kind of like how the argument with humans and chimps, we share a common ancestor that would have looked similar, right? And so there's, yeah, it's called Falcarius. It's in early Cretaceous Utah. Look it up.
That's really interesting.
Yes. Sorry. Time. Oh, my God. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Yes. You. Yes. So basically, we have found some skin impressions that show in Stegosaurus, a Triceratops relative, that there's darker, like counter shading, that is darker on the back line of the belly. We right now have no idea how to tell skin color for dinosaurs. Feathers, there's some tricks here and there. I think from the movie show here about there's certain cells and things you find on black feathers that could be seen in modern birds on certain cool feathers. But the skin color, we have no idea right now. Now, in 30 or 40 years, will someone find a really cool specimen in somewhere in, Vietnam and be like, oh, turns out, yeah. But as of right now, we can't tell color. But skin. Okay, yeah, so we don't know skin color, really. And so we do see different scale patterns sometimes. But you can see an iguana having different size scales, they're all green, so it doesn't mean that directly. And if you want to argue that point, you have to have really good evidence, because you'll be attacked by the, Temple Mafia. Yes, who was up here? Yes, whoever was, So, okay, yes, you, okay, yeah, sorry, okay. Oh, sorry, I'm sorry.
You said that the largest predators are found in South America.
Again, we find large, well, it's not entirely. We find them in Africa too, and Tyrannosaurus in North America. But we find a lot of these large theropods in South America. It just so happened that when the Jurassic ended, there were big long necks everywhere, and they died out mainly in North America. Other few exceptions in North America and Europe, and a few in Asia. But they just more long necks survived in the Southern Hemisphere. So it's assumed or understood that that's why the predators just got bigger, because in the Jurassic, the long necks were either small long necks or really big ones. And the thing is, the ones that were smaller probably didn't do as well, because they all just got bigger. So the predators got bigger too. A lot of the predators did. So it's that coevolution. An example of this is when cheetahs and gazelles in Africa are really fast. Here we have pronghorns in Texas. Pronghorns run really fast. I always wonder why. We had ice age cheetahs here. And then the cheetah's gone, and they're just fast. And so there's an evolutionary pressure to get bigger. Now, two things, since this is the last question apparently. I want to say, everyone who's laughed, my God, most people, humans have fun. They have drugs and dancing. This is the happiest thing for me. I enjoy this. If they wouldn't let me, I'd be here till midnight and you'd be all dead, because I just keep talking. So, if you want...
I'll be out there, right?
Okay, we're doing, I don't know what, you're in charge.
It's up to you.
Okay. I will be wrong. I can't really know. So if you have any questions or comments or whatever, AED, adult education, that's all right, or AED.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So AED, there's people like these people who look all this stuff. If you want to do more stuff, not whatever, let them know. Also reviews, whatever, because as of right now, I'm only doing these things in the year. We already mentioned that. So next year, a law card. If you want to just do a random Q&A, I will do that too. I don't really care. I do know, what's the thing? What am I doing? It's really weird. The fossil embroidery is next Thursday. But the focus, Fabulous Fossils on 24th September. That one will be more of just like a free Q&A, and I'm going to be doing drawings and giving away. I mean, I'm not Dr. Walker good, but you know, that's a drawing. And then, so tell me what critter you want, and I'll draw it for you, and that's part of that class. We did agree on that, right?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So I just promised it to the people. So. Okay, so apparently we have to go outside. Where are my fossils? Lock the doors. No, I'm sorry. Okay, there's one there. Okay, so my friends got the fossils. Very good. No, but seriously, we can go outside and keep talking. Oh my God, man. I'm not gonna cry. You have no idea. It sounds cheesy,
appreciate you. I thank you. I love you guys. My family's like James.